If you're a religious person, you might find that worshiping your deity and adhering to your faith's tenets might take a lot of time, might be a pretty time consuming endeavor. So maybe there's not enough time left over for you to watch the Horror Movie Syllabus video on religious horror movies. If that's the case, your prayers have been answered because we're doing a quick recap of our religious horror video. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Horror Movie Syllabus. I'm Professor Victor, and I'll be your host as we go through all the essential, noteworthy, interesting, and notorious modern horror films. If you're new to the channel, I recommend you check out the introduction video. There's a link to that in the description below, and it'll give you a pretty good idea of the Horror Movie Syllabus and how it works. What we usually do is we look at a particular subgenre of horror, and then we talk about 3 movies from that subgenre. But today, we're doing our Doctorate Edition, where we're going to do a quick recap of a video that we already did, the religious horror subgenre, recap the movies we talked about there, and then present a new 4th doctorate level movie to add to the subgenre. Those of you that are not new to the syllabus probably know that we've been doing this for a while now. It's our new series, and it's a great way to get caught up on videos that maybe you haven't seen or videos that were a little bit lengthy in a little bit more of a bite-sized Cliff Notes version, and then also get a little bit of additional new material as we talk about the doctorate level selection. When we first talked about religious horror movies, I tended to focus on non-Christian religions. And I think that was because there's a lot of overlap between religion and possession movies or cult movies. And those movies tend to be spin-offs of more Christian-based faiths. And so when I talked about religion, I talked about non-Christian movies just to kind of distinguish it a little bit more because there's a lot of overlap in those subgenres. I haven't done the same for the doctorate level this time, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Suffice to say that while I did focus on non-Christian movies in the original video, there's a lot of religious horror movies in general, both Christian and non-Christian faiths. So there's a lot to talk about. Speaking of those non-Christian movies that I talked about, why don't we go ahead and get into our recap? The first movie that I talked about, the undergraduate level selection, was The Serpent and the Rainbow. And I talked a little bit about how that movie and its voodoo ties really wound up giving it a fresh take on what we would now know as the zombie subgenre, and a totally different version of zombies than what you'd see in, say, a George Romero movie. It really had this wonderful mystique about it by turning this real religion of voodoo and these supposedly real events in the book that The Serpent and the Rainbow was based on into a story that was, truly a horror movie, but has all of this roots in reality that made it feel a little bit more realistic than the standard based on a true story movie, but still maybe not realistic enough to really buy into it or be fooled. It's a good movie. It's a Wes Craven film, and it definitely deserved to be talked about as an example of a horror film about religion. The second movie we talked about, the graduate level selection, was Angel Heart, one of my personal favorites. I absolutely love that movie, and I talked about that at length. Angel Heart is a movie about religion in the sense that it's another voodoo movie, but very different from The Serpent and the Rainbow. And it's focused a lot more on this, mystery about this private investigator investigating a movie. We spent a lot of time talking about the different controversies about that movie when it was released, specifically Lisa Bonet and her public image at the time, and a lot about the voodoo sexuality that was in the movie. We talked a little bit also about the twist ending of the movie and whether or not it's obvious by today's standards. I still contend that I can't see it clearly. I can't tell you objectively whether or not the movie is obvious because I know it so well and I love it. But I was very effusive in my praise for Angel Heart. I hope you guys did check it out if you watched the video. And if you hadn't watched the video, here's another opportunity to check out Angel Heart. And the last movie that I talked about in the video, the postgraduate level selection, was Mother. Mother, the Darren Aronofsky film starring Jennifer Lawrence, is a very controversial film that was widely maligned. A lot of people really hated it, and we talked about why I thought that was. And why I thought that was people didn't understand that it was an allegory for the Bible and the creation story, and how the characters played by Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem were Mother Earth and God, and all the other characters represented characters from the Bible, Adam and Eve, and the events of Noah's flood and all that stuff. It all makes a lot more sense if you know that going in. And so I kind of spoiled that a little bit to give you a better opportunity to enjoy the movie. But if you haven't seen it, Go in with that knowledge. Understand that it's a religious allegory for the telling of the Bible, and you'll probably be able to wrap your head around this very strange and very challenging movie much better if you're armed with that knowledge. Even with that knowledge, that movie's not for everybody. I love that movie. I'm in the minority. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people with that knowledge don't like it. And it's a bit of a rough ride with some gruesome stuff. And we talked about all that in the video last time. But I still stand by Mother. I still think it's a great film. So those were the 3 movies we discussed when we did our religion horror subgenre video. And now it's time to get into this doctorate level selection. Our doctorate level selection for this subgenre is The Devils. Now, The Devils came out in 1971. It's a Ken Russell film, which means something if you know anything about Ken Russell. And it is a very controversial, very challenging, and very shocking movie that really pretty sacrilegious if you want to get real about it. If you haven't seen it, the movie is about a 17th century priest who is accused of witchcraft by a nun who is deformed. She has a hunchback, and she kind of has like feelings for this priest, but she is jealous because he's actually interested in a different woman. Setting aside whether or not that's appropriate, but she creates these allegations, and he's forced to confront these allegations. And of course, if you know anything about 17th century religion, those allegations ain't going to be too easy to shake. And I won't spoil the movie for you, of course. Suffice to say that it is a very shocking movie for a number of reasons, most of which is just the sacrilegious imagery in the movie. You've got a lot of stuff going on in this movie, and as a result, a lot of it was cut. In fact, it's very hard to find a completely uncut version of this movie. In fact, I'm not sure that a truly uncut version fully exists. I did some research into this, and I was having a hard time figuring it out. I know that the movie showed up on Shudder recently, and that's actually where I was able to watch it. And supposedly the cut on Shudder was uncut, but from what I read, there's still minutes missing from even the Shudder cut. And so I'm told that maybe the only way you could see that fully uncut version was when they were doing some like sparse screenings around. But I've never seen the full uncut version. But I did see the version that was on Shudder, which is mostly uncut. It's got most of the stuff in it, and there's still shocking stuff even in that. There's a lot of stuff in there, weird stuff, shocking stuff, sacrilegious stuff. Seeing a priest having sex, seeing nuns have an orgy and receive enemas from an interrogator and molest a statue of Christ. Masturbation, all kinds of weird sex stuff in this movie, and some weird violence stuff too. It's all very shocking and admittedly probably done quite a bit for shock value. That said, while it might sound like an exploitation movie, and I guess maybe you could argue that it kind of is an exploitation movie, it doesn't really feel that much like one. And I think it's because it feels like it has something to say. It's based on a book called The Devils of Loudon, I think is what it's called. I've never read it, a book from the 50s. And I think it takes some liberties with the book, but it is based on a real life character from what I understand. And again, taking some liberties, but it really focuses on mass hysteria and the way that religion can kind of just create this hysteria and this, manic mania that is a result of, extreme repression. The theme of sexual repression in the movie is very strong. It's very clear. And then when that repression explodes, it explodes. You've got these nuns that have these feelings, that this nun in particular has this feeling for this priest. And then they just go nuts and they have these orgies and everything like that. It really does a great job of delving into this and exploring this repression angle and the ill effects of repression and religious control and religious dogma repressing people and how it leads to this, mass hysteria and ways of lashing out and things like that. Really fascinating stuff. A really great diatribe or criticism of religion. And as a result, it got critically lambasted. People did not like this movie when it came out. The Vatican very much did not like this movie when it came out. And again, some of these scenes that have been cut out of certain versions of the movie, including the what they call like the rape of Christ scene with the statue of Christ the nuns take down, and some other scenes like involving masturbation with a bone and stuff, weird stuff. You can see why people are having problems with it, but the movie, if you watch it, feels more than exploitation. It just feels more important to me. It's a challenging movie. It's not going to be for everybody. And if you're easily offended by, Christian religion stuff being mocked, this one ain't for you. But it's a great film, man. It's really, really good. And it's notorious for a reason, as I've described to you in great detail. But don't let the notoriety obscure the fact that it's a really well made movie, a really well acted movie, and really has something to say. It may not be 100% clear, but it still has a clear message to send about the hypocrisy of religion. And I think it nails that message. So if you haven't seen The Devils, it's a challenging one to recommend, but I'll tentatively recommend it for you. And if you have seen The Devils, let me know what you think. What are your thoughts on this movie and the controversies around it? And do you think it's exploitation, or do you think it really has something to say? Let us know in the comments below. So that was our doctorate level selection for the religion horror movies. But I wanted to give you an extra credit movie also, just a bonus movie for you, because I love this subgenre, and I know a lot of you do as well. The extra credit movie I'm going to recommend is called Blood on Satan's Claw. And Blood on Satan's Claw came out coincidentally also in 1971, same as The Devils. It's a very different movie, but some similarities in terms of setup. And so, the two movies would make a pretty good double feature, really. If you haven't seen it, Blood on Satan's Claw involves a small village in 18th century England, and it's kind of delves into their superstitions when they find this deformed skull that gets dug up, and they think it might have something to do with a demon. And as a result, after that gets dug up, the town starts acting crazy. There's a story about a girl who winds up developing a claw and starts going crazy. A lot of the school children wind up starting up their own like little cult and worshiping the devil. There's a lot of weird things going on in the movie, and it all comes together sort of. And I don't want to spoil things for you, so I don't want to get too into the specifics. But suffice to say, the movie was supposed to be an anthology with a bunch of different vignettes that got turned into one whole movie, and that kind of works and kind of doesn't work. It mostly works. It mostly works okay. But the individual stories in and of themselves are good. And it's compelling ideas of the way religion and adherence to this religion can lead to paranoia and hysteria in terms of being worried about things like possession or witchcraft or things like that. Again, very similar to what's being talked about in The Devils. But the big difference is that in this movie, the church is portrayed as kind of the good guys. It's not false accusations of witchcraft. There's really witchcraft going on, or there's really devil worshiping going on. There's really supernatural stuff happening in this movie, and the church is the defense against it. So it makes a nice counterpoint to The Devils, which kind of criticized religion and showed it as to be a sham and hypocritical and fake. Blood on Satan's Claw kind of does the opposite. It kind of shows it being more real and faithful and noble. And so it does make a good pairing. It is and I wanted to show that. I wanted to show that religion horror can be both critical of the church and defending of the church. And even though it's showing a lot of gruesome stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a movie that's anti-religion or negative and might actually be endorsing religion. So this is a good movie to offset the sacrilege of The Devils, but still has a lot of creepy stuff in it. So makes a good double feature, makes a good pairing. But even on its own, Blood on Satan's Claw is definitely well worth a watch. It's got some controversial stuff in it as well, but it's not as controversial as The Devils by any stretch of the imagination, and it's definitely worth your time. If you like religion horror, if you like folklore stuff, this movie is really going to hit you in the sweet spot. So Blood on Satan's Claw, another one that's maybe not as well known, but definitely one that's worth your time. So that's our Cliff Notes Doctorate Edition version of the religion horror subgenre, and I'm hopefully that you found some enjoyment out of this and enjoy these kind of movies, because I certainly do. And now it's that time where I like to answer a horror trivia question by reading a horror trivia pursuit card on camera, trying to answer it, giving you a chance to answer it, and let's see if I am deserving the name of Professor Victor. Okay, so I'm looking at the international subgenre or category of the card, and the question is: in 1988's The Vanishing, What do Saskia and Rex bury as a symbol of their love? And it's funny. I just talked about The Vanishing just a couple weeks ago. Um, and I know this answer, and I'm blanking on it. I'm blanking on it because I keep wanting to say that it's an egg, and it's not. I think it's a well, I don't want to say what I think it is because I want to give you a chance to answer. But it's hilarious to me that I literally just did this like a couple weeks ago on the channel, and well, I guess actually more than that now by the time you're seeing this video. But at the time I'm recording this, is just did this video a couple weeks ago, and I cannot remember for sure. So I might get this one wrong, even though I do know the answer, and it should be fresh in my mind. But for whatever reason, it's not quite there. So hopefully I've given you guys enough time to come up with your answer. My answer is like a coin. I think it's a coin that they bury, but I'm blanking on it, and so I'm not confident on that. So let's check. It's 2 coins. It's 2 coins. So I'm going to give myself credit because it's 2 coins. They buried 2 coins, and I had a coin, so I was close enough. I'm going to give myself credit for that, or at least partial credit for that one. Did you guys have 2 coins, or coins, or a coin, or did you have something else? Did you say an egg? Because I thought it was an egg, and that was a jump to my mind. I'm like, no, that's not it. And because I know that one, I remembered that one, so I'm glad that I got it. It didn't totally embarrass myself. Let me know what you guys guessed in the comments below. If you got wrong answers, especially, I'd like to know what the wrong answers are. Hopefully you've enjoyed our revisiting of religion horror. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me and going through this again and exploring the new doctorate level stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on both our doctorate selections and the previous selections. Let's talk about them more because I love those movies. So until next week. Class dismissed.